Okay, well, let's see how we go this time around. And we'll see. All right. Okay, let's try this out. And let's see how we're going for sound. Welcome to my guest, Mark Delitt from Every Nation Brisbane. Mark is a campus missionary at Every Nation Brisbane, oversees the youth and campus ministry. Mark was actually saved through the ministry of Every Nation Brisbane and served in their audio-visual ministry and heard the call to then go full-time out onto the campus. And Mark serves with his wife, Adele, who's Afrikaans, who we met while on a working holiday. They have a very well-behaved Labrador, and Mark is gracious enough to join us tonight to talk about what it means to be in campus ministry, how he heard the call. You know, that's something that as Every Nation globally we're passionate about as a ministry. And so, just like to talk to you about how you got into that, Mark, and the whole journey that you went on. But maybe I can start off by asking you this question: how did you know God wanted you to be in ministry as a campus missionary?
That's a really good question. Thanks for that. Just give me a moment. I'm just sharing this on. There's a few students on our side that want to tune in, so I'm just sharing it on our socials as well. So just give me a moment. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah. It's just requiring a new link. That's all.
Yeah, sorry about that. If I had you here with me, then there would be no problems at all.
It's isn't it great? Like, so you have the sound guy on and the sound problems. Like, that's just like you couldn't time that any better, right?
Well, the conversation that we had went really well, went really smoothly, and the second one with Pastor Nathan McGowan from Every Nation Christchurch had issues, but I think these have been the most difficult troubles that we've had so far. So they seem to be getting worse. I'm not sure what God's saying through all of that, but yeah. But I think it's worth it. It's worth it just to be able to, like I said, to get different perspectives on how people are dealing with everything that's going on in the world, and also what God's saying to them, and to learn from each other about how God can use us, even though we might be, practicing social distancing. God's still doing something, right? God's still moving. God still has a plan. This time isn't wasted. There's good things in store. So, yeah.
So,
are you good to go there, Mark?
All right, I'm good to go. I'm all shared up, ready to go.
Okay.
All right. So, what was your question to me there, Ken?
It was, how did you know? Like you're quite successful in the audiovisual industry. You're already serving God, every Sunday with AV. It's like you already have a ministry, right? You're connecting with non-Christians out there in the world. What made you decide to give that up? There's a paycheck involved with all that. What made you decide to give up all that to go into ministry as a campus missionary?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the answer really is it's about calling. It's about what God has. I believe that God has made us all for a purpose. Each and every one of us knows us all by name and created us for a very particular purpose. And it turns out that calling on my life was to be serving people in ministry. And I felt this tug in this direction while I was studying the Leadership 215 course, which is a course which is offered throughout Every Nation, which teaches you some wonderful knowledge on Christendom. Is that a word? Christendom?
Christendom, yeah. Christendom's a word. Christianity is a word as well. What do you mean by Christendom?
So it investigates history. It investigates doctrine. It investigates. It essentially equips you from a scholarly perspective to enter the world of ministry. And through doing this was a year-long course. And I just knew that when I was through that God was calling me to step out in faith and walk in this path of ministry. And I don't feel like I've been made for anything else. I love doing this. I prayed a prayer when I was doing the Leadership 215 course. I think I prayed the prayer before Leadership 215 actually, and I think it's a bit of a dangerous prayer sometimes, which is God break my heart for what breaks. It's God break my heart for what breaks your heart.
It's also a line from a Brooke Fraser Hillsong song, "Break my heart for what breaks yours."
And I prayed that, and I earnestly sought God for that, and I was like, God, I have so many silent battles in my life and I knew what the remedy was for it. Like, it's like, you wouldn't withhold a vaccine, right? Can you imagine someone withholding a COVID vaccine at the moment? It's unspeakable. You wouldn't do it.
Yep.
And so God had brought me out of the depths of many struggles, and I knew that he was the solution to every single person's silent battle. And I knew then there's nothing else for me to do. God has made me for nothing more than to go and bring his light to people. And that's where I find myself, man.
Yeah.
So it wasn't it really, I don't think it was a really difficult decision for me to follow that. Once I understood and I come to know God and his love for people, it was easy to step out in that.
That's awesome. Like, I love what you said there, Mark, about how you couldn't imagine yourself doing something else, that you love it, there's a passion for what you're doing, and other alternatives, maybe even with more stable income, things like that, they're not so appealing. And that's often a bit of a test, right? It's, could I see myself doing something else? And for you, the answer is no, and that's a great way to know that you are called. But it's not easy, right? It's not easy to step into a calling. There's resistance. I'm just interested in, maybe some people think it's easy just to go into full-time ministry, or maybe they don't. But I'm interested in what kind of resistance did you encounter in your journey into doing what God's made you to do? Because that's what I hear you saying. God's made you to do this, and you don't want to do anything else.
Yeah. Man. Look, so before I was a Christian, and before I worked in audio, I worked in oil and gas, and I had a well-paid job, on the outside looking super successful. We lived in a 2-story penthouse apartment in the city, and we had the new car and the big salary and stuff like that. On the outside looking super successful. The thing was, as I was dying inside, I was really struggling with with alcoholism, actually. But in that struggle came why I was there in oil and gas. It was all about money. And I think everyone has a God that they worship, and mine was money. And so I wanted the money, and I wanted that power that came with the money, and I judged everyone else by it. So, when I came into ministry, and, we were talking about this before we came on air as well, about, that concept of money in our lives has really changed. And, we come to understand that, daily bread, God provides for us. And when I first started in ministry, Ken, I think that I was very scared of that. It was difficult to not have a stable paycheck. It was difficult to not know where it was coming from, to be so reliant on people's own conviction to be generous to, the work that you're doing as well. That was a struggle for me, man, especially coming from where I came from.
Yep. That makes it extra hard when you have, and then you need to give up. I suppose what made it in my own journey, I've never had. I suppose I've had potential to earn money, because through my education and things like that. But but so it was harder for you. I mean, to give up a penthouse and brand new car, all that kind of stuff. But to gain something as well. That's what I also hear you saying. You gave up the empty material things, but you gained something deeply satisfying. And I wonder how the whole COVID-19 is shaking people's perception of what matters. Have you seen any of that? Have you talked to any people about saying, you know what, with all this going on, I realise life is more than X, Y, Z? Can you share anything about that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a question on people's minds at the moment, especially in countries like Australia, where it always happens somewhere else.
Yep.
Like you look at like something like the Ebola crisis in Sierra Leone, like which happened within the last few years.
Yep.
It happened in Northern Africa or Northwest Africa, and it was a long way away. And but many people died. And the tsunamis from 2004, right? Like in Indonesia, it always happens somewhere else. 220,000 people died that day. Yep. in Boxing Day 2004, right?
Yep.
But it always happens somewhere else. So when we're I've had the privilege of going to places that are labeled the third world, and I've seen tremendous amounts of faith in people.
Yep.
And I've had conversations with people here in Australia before about a hot question would be, well, why do I need God? Like,
yep.
and they would suggest that it's a need of the third world because they don't have what they need. And there's this touch of mortality all the time about existence. Places like Africa, for example, where dare I say, life is cheap.
Yep.
So here in Australia with this COVID thing, I think that we are seeing people start, mortality is knocking on our front doors.
Yes.
And we're seeing that, there's that conversation that's wanting to be had about, people are exploring things like mortality for the first time. People are exploring, things like, well, I've always leaned on science for the answer, but when science and the scientists don't have the answer, what does the position look like then? It's quite terrifying.
Yes.
And so yeah, I've been having some conversations around these points, and praise God, I think it's important for us to, as Christians, to have these conversations with people, and to my favorite verse one of my favorite verses in the Bible is from Luke 15, the parable of the lost son, where in particular, which I think is very necessary for us at the moment as Christians, where the dad sees the son coming from a long way off.
Yes.
And he's not interested in hearing his story or his excuses. He just goes straight to, give my son a ring on his finger and a robe for his back. And that's how we need to approach people at the moment as well. Not coming with the, you see, I told you so, this kind of, yada, yada. Like, we need to come at this from a place of humility and understanding. So, yeah, that's been my experience in the last month.
That's awesome, Mark. Yeah, that really rings true to me, that idea of this is a time to welcome people back, and not to reinforce the stereotype which drives a lot of people away, or the judgmental Christian, the one that's looking for vindication, the opportunity to say, I told you so, but to do just like the father did in that story. That's great. Maybe just change tack a little bit, I suppose. You took over campus ministry from from a great friend of mine, almost a legend in the Oceania region, Roisin Welsh, and she did a lot of great work, really put her stamp and her flavour on the ministry there. I see that you have a background. I know that background. That's my garden. And
I got a few surprises for you in our conversation, there, Ken.
Excellent. Well, I've
come to love this garden.
I've come to. What do you like the fact that the palings are a little bit kind of old, and there's gaps in them and things like that, bit of character?
Yeah, it's so rustic, man.
It is very rustic.
I love it. It looks like a peaceful space to be in.
It is, actually. It is. That's a ginkgo tree there, a male ginkgo tree. Beautiful leaves. They'll start turning yellow soon, and then I'm sure you'll appreciate the change in foliage foliage colour. But yeah, back to my
I
question.
can't wait. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, how did you find like you had in some ways big shoes to fill? Was there any pressure that you found regarding that, or was there any maybe not from other people, or that you put on yourself? And then whenever there's a leadership transition, there's always there, there's some people like it the way it was done the old way, and then there's relationships that need to be built, and that can be challenging to navigate at times. But yeah, how did you find that transition from a successful campus missionary, a well-loved, regionally well-loved, successful campus missionary, to yourself coming in, you and Adele coming in, and how did that transition go?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you guys love rugby league in Melbourne, right?
No, we don't. We have a good rugby
Okay.
league team. We have the Melbourne Storm, but we love Australian rules football.
Yeah. Well, you still know of Darren Lockyer, right? Queensland legend.
I know of Darren Lockyer because I used to live in Queensland. I followed the State of Origin Rugby League, so I'm the only person in Victoria probably knows about him.
Yeah, and that I mean, so why I bring him up is he was a legend in the number 6 jersey for Brisbane and for Queensland for so many years, and I think some could look at that jersey as a poison chalice almost, like who can possibly come and fill those boots after Darren Lockyer leaves, and uh, the person who came and filled those boots was Jonathan Thurston,
Yes.
who is an absolute legend in the Indigenous community and throughout the whole community. Future immortal, exactly.
Definitely.
Not saying that I'm Darren Lockyer or Jonathan Thurston, but what I'm saying is successful transition can happen,
Yes.
and it has to do with the mindset of the person and the people involved in that transition. So I don't know of the transition that happened with Darren leaving that number 6 jersey to Jonathan Thurston, but I do know from looking at legacies is the Maroons continued on winning after that happened.
Yes.
And I have to know that happened because someone like Darren Lockyer spent a lot of time pouring into that person, spent a lot of time setting him up for success. So yes, it was daunting coming in. Rasheen is an absolute campus ministry legend, not only in Brisbane, but in Australia or New Zealand, but the whole Oceania region, right?
Absolutely.
So it was super daunting coming in that. But in that transition time, we learned a lot. She did her best to set us up well. There's I believe there's an endorsing that needs to happen. And that's something that I've taken into my leadership now with in regards to our campus interns. We have interns for the campus ministry role or for ministry roles. And for when I'm journeying through with a leader, endorsement is a biblical concept from leadership. If you look at David and how he set up Solomon, when David wanted to build God's temple, and you can see that he would have had an amazing heart to do so. And then to find out, well, actually, it's not God's intent for you to do this, David. It's for your son. And his reaction was to endorse his son Solomon to fulfill that, because he saw the purpose was bigger than what he himself and his son was. So I feel like that happened, and we grew on that, and we learned a lot from that process. And I also feel that God was in this. This was also a transition that was led by God. That it wasn't like a whim thing of now she was feeling time to leave and we were feeling time to come in. It was God was speaking to her about transitioning into other things, and to us at the same time. And it was really my wish, Ken, is for the campus ministry here in Brisbane is that we received this campus ministry and it was lit. It was on fire. My intention is to hand this campus ministry over to the next person in an out of control bonfire. and I'll do everything that I can to set the next campus minister up for success here in Brisbane, because it's God's plan, it's God's work, and He has called us specifically, just as He called Rasheen for that time to lead His work at that time, and He's called us to lead this work at this time. We also understand that He is busy calling the next person to lead for the work that He wants to do there. So I'm not going to get in the way of God's plans, man. We'll just. It was, yeah. I hope that answers your question.
That's great. Two things I kind of draw out of it is the importance of relationship. When you talk about endorsement, really, you're talking about trust. You're talking about relationship. You're saying this is bigger than me, and the next generation is important, and I need to be in a relationship with them because to make sure that they succeed. Their success is also my success, and that's powerful. I think we need to see more relationship in leadership. I think just as a general rule, sometimes leadership devolves to position and power, but I think relationship, and that's the biblical view of leadership, is relationship. But also you talked about God's timing, God's plan. He's sovereign. He has a plan. He has a purpose, and He has the right people at the right time, and He has the right to move us around and to open up doors and close doors. And I must say that both you and Adele have done an incredible job up in Brisbane. And I think particularly what I've learned, and I watch you guys and I learn from you guys, and that's why I wanted to have you on tonight, is because you have a real passion. You've really thought. I like Christians who think. That's kind of my passion in life, is to get Christians who think and get Christians to think. But I love the way that you think about how are we going to reach out to non-religious people, whether they're Australians or they're whatever. How's that journey gone for you? How's that journey gone for reaching out to people that maybe we might have put in they're a bit more difficult? Let's get that low-hanging fruit first, and these other guys, they're a bit harder.
Yeah, man, it's super trying sometimes, actually. But speaking of relationship, can you see these headphones, Ken? This is how our relationship started. Do you remember this?
I do remember that.
You brought these headphones all the way. Yeah, you brought these all the way from.
You know what?
Sorry.
I know those headphones very well. I used them when Matt Doomley gave them to me. I was using them. I thought these are the best headphones I've ever used. I don't want to take them back up. But you know what? I was faithful to the mission, and I took those headphones up to you. And the relationship that we have has come out of it.
Totally, all about relationship, mate. No, look, that's a cornerstone of this reaching out. I mean, you know what? There's an understanding that Adele and I have, that the unique ministry in which God has called Adele and I to. I became a Christian 4 years ago, but that wasn't when that journey started. That journey actually started when I was back in high school. Wow. And with the chaplain there that was at my high school. His name's Troy, and he, I was into smoking. Yeah, shout out to chaplains. It's amazing work, right? So he was the chaplain at our high school, and I was into smoking stuff and playing rock and roll music, and I wasn't really interested.
Podcast.
No. So I was interested in higher things, but not like the higher things. But anyway, he hung out with me, man, and he spent time with me, and he was everything that I didn't think that Christians were. Like, he didn't throw judgment on me. He was there for me. He supported me. Yes. He tried to be my friend. He was my friend. But he wasn't interested in I had this perception of Christians wanting to seal the deal, like it was some kind of telemarketing thing. Yes. And he didn't come across like that. He just came across as someone who genuinely cared about me and my future. He didn't see what we would say, and you'd hear in church circles, would be he was sowing seed, right? Yes. And so he was faithfully sowing seed into my life, which he never knew if he was ever going to see the harvest from it.
Yes.
The harvest being he wanting me to also understand. He has an understanding that God loves everyone and he wants relationship with people.
Yes.
And he's sowing these seeds in the hope that, you know, those seeds will come into fruition, that I will know this too.
Yes.
But it was like, we're talking like a gap of like 12, 13, 14 years here.
That's amazing.
So God prepared me in my own walk for this ministry of walking with people that were like me, in that it's not about a seal the deal, let's get the job done, like, and count numbers here. This is a journey and it can take a while. And the ministry that God has called us into is sowing seeds and journeying with people regardless of how long this takes.
Yes.
Because that's where we find ourselves as a society right now in Australia. You know, if God will come along, and I am faithful that he will give me the sickle in my hand to see the harvest one day.
Yes.
And there are people in which I have seen that, and I've been blessed to see that and see what God has brought them through as well. But I'm not interested in just people for numbers. I'm interested in people and them developing that relationship with God. And if that journey takes ages, then giddy up, let's do it, man. This is what God has called me to do, this for life. I've got nothing else to do in life than to do this. So I will journey with you.
That's amazing. I love that. Let me throw out a tweet that I heard that was tweeted, and let me get your reaction to it. And it was along the lines of, you don't need to know somebody's name. Well, no, you don't need to be in a relationship to save a drowning person. The implication was that evangelism doesn't. You don't need to know. You don't need to be in a relationship with someone to save them, because they're drowning, and we just need to pull them out of the river or the water that they're drowning in. What are your thoughts just off the top of your head? Just kind of sprung that one on you, but yeah, what do you think? Agree, disagree? You see where they're coming from?
Run it by me again. Sorry.
The idea of, so the tweet went along the lines of, you don't need to know the name of someone. You don't need to be in a relationship with someone who's drowning to save them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that sounds legit.
Okay. Yep.
I think there's an element to that, like within the context of that, like if I visualize it, you know, yes, you don't need to know the name of somebody, but they quickly ask for yours once you bring them out. And, you know, I think God can do miraculous things in people's lives.
Yes.
And does. So I think it's important for us to be aware that we shouldn't have a formula for it.
Yes, I love it. Yep.
You know, and if we see somebody hurting, regardless of what that looks like, not be too concerned about the formula, but just be more concerned about the person.
Got you.
That's my take.
So on the one hand, let's not be salesmen that are trying to seal the deal. On the other hand, maybe in reaction to that, the salesman mentality is, or the opposite kind of, a different way would be to focus on the relationship. But at the same token, let's not put God in a box and say, oh, hang on a sec, I can't, because I haven't got a good relationship, I haven't had them over for dinner, I haven't been to their house, we haven't gone on a holiday around the world yet, therefore I can't share the gospel with them or invite them to church or whatever. So, yeah, I like that. That's your thinking has come through. Don't put God in a box. I love it.
Yeah, that's something I've learned like intensely in this time in ministry is, you know, you can't put God in a box, man. God is, you know, if God could be put in a box, he's not worthy of worship.
Yes, absolutely. That's right. I think my reaction to that tweet was, I think it's a poor metaphor and of what the process of salvation is. It's probably something that works very well in a bit more of a religious context, but generally speaking, I think for the context that we're in, when I say where, I think Australia and Melbourne, definitely I think of Melbourne, but probably similar in Brisbane. Although I think Brisbane's a bit more religious than Melbourne. Is what was I saying? The idea of it's relationships are you want to default to relationships, not to other methods, I suppose. Okay, well that's I've got so much more I could ask you, but I don't want to drag it out too long. Why don't what I'll do is I'll get you back another time and we'll do a follow up from this. And if anyone has any questions, any of our viewers at the moment, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Mark, then I'm going to do just a quick kind of speed round with Mark right now. If you have any questions for him, then we'll get into it. Put them in the chat and we'll ask him that, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. So thanks so much for Mark for joining us, and for you guys as well who are watching along. Sorry about the sound issues at the beginning, but hopefully we'll get on top of those for future meta conversations. But let me, Mark, I know that you've travelled a lot, so this is a bit of a speed round. I don't need to think too much about it. It's not like, it doesn't have to be super profound or anything like that. But I know you've travelled a lot. Where's your favourite place in the world and why?
I'm just letting God's creation speak for itself.
Is that from Canada? I know you're up in Canada.
Iceland. I did go. I tried to find the Northern Lights in Canada, but we didn't get there. Or we did get to Canada, but we didn't see them there. But I saw them in November in Iceland, and it is my favorite place in the whole world.
Yes, like a land of ice and fire, really, in many ways.
Amazing.
Were you there in winter, or what part of the year were you there?
I was on the cusp of the fall, going into the first weeks of winter.
Okay.
And it was stunning, like amazing.
Awesome. Maybe one day, hopefully, I'll make it out there. Maybe in the new creation when the lights are even better. What was your favorite TV show or cartoon growing up?
Seinfeld, and that was in my 20s. But growing up, Hey Arnold and Doug. I think I learned all of my morality almost from Hey Arnold, Doug, and Home Improvement.
Okay, Home Improvement. Okay, nice. We're getting some. Okay. Did you ever watch The Simpsons?
Yes, very much. I quite enjoy The Simpsons. In particular, Harry Shearer. I think he's a genius.
There was a famous Simpsons episode where Aurora Borealis was confined, localized into Principal Skinner's kitchen. Do you remember that one? The steam hams.
No.
Aurora Borealis at this time of year, at this latitude, localized entirely in your kitchen. No, okay, all right, that's fine. So, Hey Arnold, Seinfeld, and Home Improvement. Cool. When did you start growing your hair long?
Like probably 13. I've looked the same for like 20 years.
Okay. What's your hair care regime like?
Dude, I got to tell you, it takes a lot of effort to look this jobless. So, this is a once a day hair wash, brushing twice a day, hair ties. Like this is the battle for hair ties in my household. It's real. Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine. So, I'm sure it's put the marriage to the test at different times. What meal would you cook me if you were wanting to impress?
Oh, yeah, man. Look, probably chicken thighs on my barbecue.
Chicken thigh.
Or actually, I'll take that back. I would make you the Big Mark burger.
The Big Mark burger. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's when social distancing is over, I'm up in Brisbane for the Big Mark burger. Absolutely.
Do it.
All right. A few more here. What's your favorite mythical animal?
Oh. Dragons.
Dragons, okay. The Chinese dragons or the European dragons?
The Game of Thrones dragons, can I say that?
That's more European style, yeah. Because the Chinese dragons are a bit like big worms, and so they're not as epic. But anyway, soundtrack to your life. What's the theme song of your life?
Oh,
Eye of the Tiger.
I love that song.
Well, don't let me put words in your mouth. What's the theme song of your life?
I love so many songs. Can I say my favorite song of all time is "The Last Time I Saw Richard" by Joni Mitchell.
Okay, all right. I have no idea what that is. My music vocabulary is quite low, but maybe some of our guys know. I'm gonna
It's
look
a
it up. I'm gonna look it up.
wonderful poetic piece.
Okay.
7 minutes long.
Yep.
It's wonderful. That whole album of Joni Mitchell,
Yep.
Joni Mitchell Blue, is like it's her creme de la creme folk album of the 70s.
Yep.
It's like I can do it cover to cover, man.
Awesome.
I love Joni Mitchell. I'm unashamed. I think she's amazing.
Okay. Who is your favorite preacher or theologian?
Oh, it's good. Well, my favorite in COVID has been your dailies from your garden, man. Like this. Like, dude, I love it. Like, I love how much you break it down. Like, so you take a complex topic and you break it down tremendously where it's understandable. And I love that. It's been, and also, not blowing smoke here, man. I love Pastor Nelly,
Yep.
My pastor. I'm blessed by the leadership that we have here throughout our Every Nation world, man.
Awesome.
Seriously.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I suspect you only like my daily devotions for the garden background, but let me final speed round question. We do have a few questions from the chat. We can look into that real quick. Are you a fan of the new Star Wars?
Okay, I got a level with you, Ken.
Yes.
I've never watched the Star Wars.
Okay, that's fine.
It's got to do with the fact that I can't decide whether I want to watch it by release date or by the story order. And such is my procrastination on the matter, I haven't started.
Okay, cool. Maybe you can just give us just a quick rundown on what it's like to be in ministry as a couple. That comes from my wife. Kira Johnson asked Mark, how has it been working as a couple in ministry? So we'll wrap up with this question. I suppose we could do a whole series on this itself, but maybe just your thoughts on that.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Okay.
I just love it, man. Like, and I'm sure you can have a story similar to this. Adele is a tremendous leader, and I have seen her grow in ways in which I never suspected she was capable of.
That's amazing.
And I just love seeing her go about. I watch her in meetings, and I watch her interact with people, and I'm completely flabbergasted by it. I just think it's amazing, and that's been a big blessing to me.
Yep. Would you say that you're falling even more in love with her?
I think so.
Okay.
I definitely think so. It's something that I need to work on, though.
Yes.
In that I can work with her for 10 hours a day and then be exhausted, and then she wants to spend time, and I'm like, well, we've been spending time for 10 hours, but the thing, I need to better separate work from hanging out as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Maybe we can talk about that one time. Maybe we can get you back and we can talk about what it's like to minister with your wife. And we've had our ups and downs, Kira and I. But all those daily devotions that you've been talking about, that's actually from Kira. And I never understood why she was passionate about making films and videos years ago, but God's used it in this time, so that's been awesome, and it's been great to go on that journey with her and be blown away by that. Yeah, maybe that's something we could talk about again in the future. But I suppose I wanted to wrap it up there, and just to say, Matt Doomany does say, watch Star Wars according to the release date. That's the way to go. Not the story chronology, but the actual release dates. But yeah, thank you so much, and it's been great. I love chatting with you. You are a real thinker. You get me to think. So not only do I like Christians thinking, I like Christians to provoke me to think as well. And you don't see that a lot necessarily, but it's good. I think we're similar in some ways, very different in others. Hair length, but it's been definitely fun hanging out. So, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. If you have any other questions that you would like, maybe for future discussion with Mark at some time, then by all means put them in the chat. But this has been Meta, and we were actually going to be having another one with Pastor GP Lim. Pastor GP is the father of Melbourne's very own Derek Lim and Brisbane's very own David Lim, and he's been gracious enough to agree to a short conversation on Friday night at 7 p.m. So if you're free, drop by, say hi, or ask some questions in the chat. That would be great. But this has been Meta. Our guest tonight has been Mark Delitt from Every Nation in Brisbane, and I'm Ken Johnston, pastor at Every Nation in Melbourne. We do Meta to provide conversations, to provide wisdom, perspective, insight, hope, and courage beyond ourselves. I hope you guys have had fun, and as always, be blessed.